Within the intricate theater of your mind, a constant performance unfolds, shaping your every perception. The crowd's current can be overwhelmingly strong, pulling even the most resolute swimmer off course. As we navigate the labyrinth of our own minds, armed with these philosophical insights, the ultimate question remains not whether our brain will cease its subtle deceptions, but how adept we become at recognizing them, questioning them, and choosing a clearer path. What ingrained assumption will you choose to examine today? These are not mere quirks of character, but fundamental operations of the human cognitive machine. Our brains, evolved for survival, often prioritize speed and efficiency over absolute, objective truth. This creates predictable patterns of error, invisible shortcuts that lead us far from rational paths. Understanding these patterns is the first crucial step towards navigating them with conscious intent. For centuries, philosophy has offered tools not just to observe the mind, but to refine it. It teaches us to question our assumptions, to dissect the very fabric of our beliefs rigorously, to seek not comfortable affirmations, but the stark, sometimes unsettling, clarity of truth itself. Philosophy encourages the cultivation of an inner observer, detached and discerning in its gaze. It provides the frameworks to distinguish between what is and what merely appears to be. But is this internal narrator entirely trustworthy, or are its tales subtly, expertly crafted fictions? The journey into our cognitive landscape can be challenging, but the rewards are profound clarity. Imagine your deeply held beliefs as a fortress, its walls built from years of experience. Confirmation bias acts as the selective gatekeeper, only admitting validating information inside those walls. This reinforces convictions, making them seem unassailable, even if founded on partial truths. The world's symphony of information becomes a solo, playing only the tunes you wish to hear. Negative experiences often etch themselves deeper into memory than moments of joy or neutrality. This negativity bias, a primal survival instinct, skews our perception of present and future realities. A single critical comment can overshadow a dozen compliments, a common manifestation of this bias. This can lead to a worldview where threats and problems appear more prevalent than they are. The first piece of information encountered often becomes an unshakable reference point, an anchor. We navigate our lives guided by an internal compass, often unaware of its inherent magnetic deviations. Subsequent data is then judged relative to this initial anchor, whether it is relevant or not. This anchoring bias impacts negotiations, diagnoses, and even our everyday estimations profoundly. We might cling to an initial quote, an early opinion resisting adjustment despite new evidence. The Dunning-Kruger effect describes a peculiar mismatch between perceived and actual competence levels. Those with limited knowledge often overestimate their abilities, unaware of their own significant gaps. Conversely, true experts may underestimate their skills, acutely aware of the subject's vast complexities. The allure of the crowd, the bandwagon effect, sways decisions through sheer popular momentum. When many adopt a belief or behavior, it gains an aura of correctness and desirability. This bias can stifle innovation and critical thought, promoting conformity over individual assessment. But these mental mirages are not inescapable prisons. Philosophy offers keys to liberation. These deviations, these cognitive biases, are ancient architects of thought, silently shaping our world. By understanding these biases and wielding philosophical tools, we can reclaim clarity in our thinking. Let us first dissect confirmation bias, the mind's tendency to favor information that affirms pre-existing beliefs, often ignoring contradictory evidence. It's like an exclusive club where only like-minded ideas are granted entry, reinforcing our convictions until they seem unshakable. Imagine an investor who believes a certain stock will soar. They avidly consume news articles highlighting its potential, share analyst reports that echo their optimism, and discuss it with fellow enthusiasts. Meanwhile, they might subconsciously dismiss or downplay warnings about market volatility, critical financial analyses, or the company's underlying weaknesses. The Socratic method, originating with the ancient Greek philosopher Socrates, offers a potent antidote. It is a disciplined process of inquiry, a form of cooperative argumentative dialogue between individuals, based on asking and answering questions to stimulate critical thinking and to draw out ideas and underlying presuppositions. By relentlessly questioning our own beliefs, why do I believe this? What evidence supports it? What evidence might refute it? Are there alternative explanations? We actively dismantle the echo chamber. The Socratic method forces us to confront inconvenient truths and examine the foundations of our convictions. Consider now the pervasive influence of negativity bias. Our brains are wired to give more weight to negative experiences, information, and emotions than to positive or neutral ones. This is an evolutionary relic, for our ancestors, quickly recognizing and remembering threats, a predator, a poisonous plant, was crucial for survival. A single dangerous encounter was far more significant than many pleasant, uneventful days. In modern life, this bias means a single criticism can overshadow numerous compliments, or one piece of bad news can disproportionately darken our outlook on an otherwise positive situation. We might ruminate on a small mistake for days, while quickly forgetting a significant achievement. This isn't necessarily a sign of pessimism, but rather the ancient wiring of our brains diligently, if sometimes excessively, scanning for and prioritizing potential problems. Stoic philosophy, particularly the teachings of Epictetus, Seneca, and Marcus Aurelius, provides powerful strategies to counteract negativity bias. A core tenet of Stoicism is the dichotomy of control, understanding what is within our power to change and what is not. External events, the past, and other people's actions are largely outside our control. Our responses, judgments, and actions, however, are within it. Stoicism encourages objective representation, viewing events as they are, stripped of our emotional judgments and negative interpretations. When faced with a setback, instead of lamenting, "This is terrible, everything is ruined," a Stoic approach would be to factually describe the event. This specific thing happened. Now, what can I learn from it, and what is the most rational and virtuous way to respond? This reframes challenges as opportunities for growth and resilience. Next, we encounter anchoring bias, where our decisions are excessively influenced by the first piece of information we receive on a topic. This initial anchor sets a mental benchmark, and subsequent judgments are often made by adjusting from this point, even if the anchor itself is arbitrary or irrelevant. It's a powerful cognitive shortcut that can subtly steer our choices in everything from salary negotiations to purchasing decisions. They are the unseen filters, coloring your experiences before they even reach conscious awareness. Imagine you're buying a used car. If the seller first mentions a high price, that figure, however inflated, can become your anchor. Even if you negotiate it down significantly, your perception of getting a good deal is shaped by that initial high mark. Conversely, if an item is initially presented with a very low price, even if its quality is later revealed to be poor, that low anchor can make subsequent, more reasonable prices for better items seem disproportionately expensive. Philosophy encourages systematic doubt and critical deconstruction as a counter to anchoring. Inspired by thinkers like René Descartes, who employed methodological skepticism to question all his beliefs until he arrived at indubitable truths, we can learn to consciously challenge initial information. Before accepting an anchor, ask, is this first piece of information reliable? What are its sources? Are there other reference points I should consider? By actively seeking multiple perspectives, deliberately considering wildly different starting points, or even dropping your own anchor, by stating your position or valuation first when appropriate, you can mitigate this bias. Philosophy trains the mind to resist passive acceptance and to engage in active, critical evaluation from the outset, ensuring that initial impressions don't disproportionately dictate subsequent reasoning and conclusions. We now turn to the Dunning-Kruger effect, a cognitive bias whereby individuals with low ability at a task overestimate their ability. It is related to the cognitive bias of illusory superiority and comes from the inability of individuals to recognize their lack of ability. Without the self-awareness of metacognition, people cannot objectively evaluate their actual competence or incompetence. This paradox means that the less competent someone is, the less likely they are to even realize it. On the flip side, highly competent individuals may underestimate their relative competence, erroneously assuming that tasks easy for them are also easy for others. They might be more aware of the vastness of their field, the nuances they have yet to master, and thus feel less certain of their expertise compared to those who know just enough to be dangerously confident. It's the curse of knowledge, meeting a lack of awareness of others' lesser knowledge. Philosophical traditions emphasizing epistemic humility offer a vital countermeasure. This involves a deep understanding of the nature, scope, and limits of human knowledge, a core concern of epistemology. Socrates famously declared, "I know that I know nothing," which wasn't a statement of literal ignorance, but an acknowledgement of the vastness of what he did not know, fostering a mindset of perpetual inquiry and intellectual modesty. Cultivating epistemic humility means continually assessing the basis of our confidence, seeking feedback from diverse and critical sources, and embracing the discomfort of not knowing. It means understanding that true expertise often involves a profound awareness of complexity and uncertainty. Finally, let us examine the bandwagon effect, a psychological phenomenon where individuals do or believe things primarily because many other people are doing or believing them, regardless of their own beliefs, which they may ignore or override. The perceived popularity of an idea or trend creates a powerful social pressure to conform, driven by a desire for acceptance or a fear of exclusion. This bias can be seen in fashion fads, investment bubbles, political movements, and even the spread of unsubstantiated rumors. When everyone is doing it, or everyone believes it, critical, independent assessment often takes a backseat. The safety of the herd can feel reassuring, but it can also lead entire groups astray if the prevailing current is misguided or based on flawed premises. The individual voice of reason can be drowned out by the chorus of conformity. Philosophy, particularly strains that emphasize individualism, critical thinking, and authenticity, such as existentialism or the Enlightenment's call to dare to know, Sapir-Aude, provides the intellectual fortitude to resist the bandwagon. Thinkers like John Stuart Mill argued for the importance of dissenting opinions and individual liberty, recognizing that popular consensus is not a guarantor of truth, and that progress often relies on those who dare to think differently. Consider the echo chamber of your own mind, where familiar thoughts reverberate with amplified certainty. Cultivating the habit of independent thought involves questioning the consensus. Is this popular because it's true and valuable, or simply because it's popular? What are the underlying reasons for this trend? What are my own, reasoned conclusions, independent of the crowd? Philosophy encourages us to be the authors of our own beliefs and actions, rather than mere subscribers to the prevailing narrative, fostering a resilient and authentic self. The confirmation bias, as we've seen, insulates our beliefs by selectively filtering reality. The Socratic method acts like a universal solvent for this intellectual calcification. It's not about finding the answer, but about refining the questions, exposing hidden assumptions, and fostering an openness to being wrong. The process of Socratic questioning can feel uncomfortable, like probing a tender spot. It challenges the ego's desire for certainty. Yet this discomfort is a sign of growth. Each question peeled back: how do I know this to be true? What if the opposite were true? What are the consequences of this belief? Chips away at the fortress of unexamined conviction, replacing rigid dogma with flexible, resilient understanding. This is the path to genuine intellectual autonomy. Negativity bias, our ancient alarm system, often works overtime in the modern world, painting our perceptions with a darker hue. Stoicism doesn't seek to eliminate negative emotions, but to contextualize them through reason. By focusing on our internal responses rather than external events themselves, we reclaim our power. It's the difference between being helplessly tossed by waves of misfortune and learning to navigate them with a steady hand on the tiller of our own judgment. A Stoic might practice a premeditation of evils, premeditatio malorum, not to dwell on negativity, but to mentally prepare for potential adversity. By considering worst-case scenarios calmly and rationally, their power to shock and overwhelm is diminished. This builds resilience, allowing us to appreciate present good fortune more fully and to face inevitable challenges with equanimity, transforming fear of the unknown into preparedness and composure. The anchoring bias demonstrates how easily our starting point can dictate our entire journey of judgment. Philosophy's emphasis on radical questioning, akin to Cartesian doubt, provides the tools to lift this anchor. Descartes sought to systematically doubt everything he believed until he found something indubitable. While we may not take it to such extremes, the principle of interrogating initial information, especially when stakes are high, is profoundly liberating. Counter-anchoring, consider actively resetting the negotiation or evaluation by introducing new, well-researched reference points. If presented with an initial sales price, don't just negotiate down from it. Research comparable market values and introduce them as a new baseline. This isn't just about haggling. It's about ensuring the entire framework for decision-making is sound, not arbitrarily set by the first voice heard. Critical thinking here is about redefining the frame of reference. The Dunning-Kruger effect is a subtle trap, as the very lack of knowledge prevents recognition of that lack. Epistemic humility, fostered by philosophical inquiry, is the key. It involves not just admitting I don't know, but actively seeking out the boundaries of one's knowledge. It means valuing the questions of those who know more and being wary of certainty in complex domains, especially one's own. True wisdom isn't just accumulated facts, but an appreciation for the vastness of the unknown. A practical step towards epistemic humility is to regularly engage with perspectives that challenge your own, and to solicit honest, critical feedback from trusted sources who are themselves knowledgeable. Instead of defending a position, try to articulate the strongest arguments against it. This intellectual stress testing helps calibrate self-assessment more accurately and fosters a growth mindset, where expertise is a journey, not a destination. The bandwagon effect pulls us towards conformity, leveraging our innate desire for social acceptance. Philosophical ethics, especially those valuing autonomy and reasoned judgment, empower us to resist. Kant's concept of enlightenment as man's emergence from his self-imposed knowledge, his courage to use his own understanding without direction from another, is a direct call to counteract this bias. It's about valuing truth and personal conviction over mere popularity, or the shadows that loom larger than life, making challenges appear more daunting than they are. Resisting the bandwagon doesn't mean being contrarian for its own sake. It means developing the critical faculty to assess ideas on their merits, not their crowd appeal. Before joining a trend, ask, what are the actual arguments for this? What are the potential downsides overlooked by the majority? Does this align with my own values and reasoned judgment? This internal dialogue is a hallmark of an authentically lived philosophical life. Confirmation bias, if unchecked, constructs a comfortable but ultimately limiting reality tunnel. The Socratic method systematically introduces pattern interrupts, questions that force a re-evaluation of the familiar. It's like a cartographer resurveying known territory, discovering inaccuracies and previously unseen features. Applying the Socratic method to daily life could involve simple practices like belief journaling, writing down a belief, the reasons for it, and then actively seeking out 3 pieces of evidence that challenge it. Or, in discussions, focusing on understanding the other person's viewpoint fully before offering one's own. These aren't just intellectual exercises. They are habits of mind that cultivate openness and reduce the allure of uncritical agreement with oneself. Stoicism's answer to negativity bias is not to suppress emotion but to refine judgment. When a negative thought arises, "I'll never succeed at this," a Stoic approach interrogates it. Is this statement an objective fact or my interpretation? What evidence supports or refutes it? What aspects are within my control? This shifts focus from helpless reaction to empowered action, cultivating an inner citadel of resilience against the fluctuations of fortune. A core Stoic practice is distinguishing between impressions and assents. An impression is an initial thought or feeling, e.g., "This situation is a disaster." Assent is choosing to agree with that impression. Stoics train to pause before assenting, especially to negative or fear-inducing impressions, examining them rationally. This pause is where wisdom intervenes, allowing us to choose a more measured, virtuous response, rather than being carried away by initial reactivity. Anchoring bias can be particularly insidious in complex decisions where initial numbers or statements exert disproportionate influence. Philosophy trains us to deconstruct the given. Before accepting any initial figure or premise, ask, who benefits from this anchor? What assumptions underlie it? What would this look like if approached from a completely different starting point? This mental triangulation helps to establish a more objective basis for judgment. A technique to dislodge an anchor is to deliberately consider extreme opposites or to re-anchor by proposing a countervalue that is equally far from your true estimate but in the opposite direction, before settling on a more reasoned position. This isn't about being difficult, but about expanding the perceived range of possibilities and breaking the magnetic pull of the initial, often arbitrary, starting point. It's about reclaiming the full spectrum of rational evaluation. The Dunning-Kruger effect highlights a fundamental challenge in self-assessment. Philosophical epistemic humility is the antidote, fostering an awareness that the first step to knowledge is recognizing the extent of one's ignorance. It encourages seeking out constructive criticism and being willing to revise one's understanding, no matter how expert one feels. The wisest are often those most aware of what they still have to learn. To combat Dunning-Kruger, one might adopt the beginner's mind, Shoshin, from Zen Buddhism but applicable here. Approach subjects, even familiar ones, as if for the first time with curiosity and openness, free from preconceived notions of mastery. This allows for new insights and prevents the complacency that often accompanies perceived expertise. It means being a lifelong student, always questioning, always exploring. The bandwagon effect often operates on our fear of missing out or being socially isolated. Philosophy champions the examined life, where beliefs are adopted through reason, not social contagion. This requires courage, the courage to stand apart if necessary, to trust one's own critical judgment even when it conflicts with the majority. This isn't about rebellion, but about intellectual integrity and authenticity. The first story you hear often becomes the anchor, holding your judgment steadfastly in its wake. A practical defense against the bandwagon effect is to deliberately delay decision-making when a strong group consensus emerges. Take time to research independently. Consult with trusted individuals known for their objective thinking, perhaps even those holding minority views, and reflect on your own core principles. Popularity is a poor proxy for truth. Philosophical training helps us build a more reliable internal compass. Confirmation bias whispers sweet affirmations, but the Socratic gadfly stings us into broader awareness. This philosophical approach doesn't just seek to disprove, it seeks to understand more deeply, to test the resilience of ideas. By embracing this gentle interrogation of our own minds, we move from passively held beliefs to actively constructed, well-defended knowledge, capable of evolving. The relentless vigilance of negativity bias can be balanced by Stoic gratitude and objective assessment. Practicing gratitude for what one has, rather than focusing on what is lacking or feared, shifts perspective. Combined with rationally assessing actual threats versus perceived ones, this builds a mental landscape that is realistic yet hopeful, prepared yet not perpetually anxious. Anchoring subtle tyranny over judgment is loosened by philosophy's demand for foundational clarity. systematically questioning the origin and validity of initial information, and actively seeking out diverse, independent reference points before forming an opinion, transforms us from passive recipients of information to active constructors of our understanding. It's about building our mental house on solid rock, not shifting sands. The Dunning-Kruger effect reminds us that confidence is not a reliable indicator of competence. Philosophical humility, the Socratic awareness of one's own limits, acts as a constant recalibration. It encourages lifelong learning and an openness to being corrected, transforming potential arrogance into a teachable spirit. True mastery includes the wisdom to know there is always more to learn. The bandwagon effect can feel like an irresistible current, but philosophy offers an anchor of independent reason. By cultivating the courage to think for oneself, to evaluate claims on their merit rather than their popularity, we develop intellectual sovereignty. This isn't about isolation, but about contributing to the conversation with a voice that is authentically and thoughtfully our own. These cognitive biases are not personal failings but universal human tendencies, glitches in our mental software honed by evolution for different times. Philosophy provides the debugging tools, critical thinking, self-reflection, ethical frameworks, to update our cognitive operating system for the complexities of modern life, allowing for more reasoned, intentional thought and action. Recognizing these biases in ourselves and others is not about cynicism, but about compassion and understanding. It allows for more patient dialogue, more forgiving interpretations of human error, and a more committed effort towards clarity. Philosophy doesn't promise perfect rationality, but it offers a path towards being less wrong, more aware, and ultimately more free in our own minds. The Socratic challenge to know thyself is, in part, a call to understand these hidden currents within our own thinking. By bringing cognitive biases from the unconscious shadows into the light of conscious awareness, we diminish their power to covertly direct our lives. This self-knowledge is a cornerstone of philosophical practice and a prerequisite for genuine wisdom and self-mastery. Each bias acts like a subtle distortion in the lens through which we perceive reality. Confirmation bias tints everything to match our expectations. Negativity bias adds a somber filter. Anchoring sets the initial focus, often incorrectly. Dunning-Kruger can blur the image of our own capabilities. The bandwagon effect makes the crowd's view seem sharper than our own. Philosophy provides the lens cloth and the optician's chart. We might believe our knowledge is a vast ocean, when it is but a single, confident droplet. The path of philosophical inquiry is not about reaching a final destination of unbiased thought, as that may be an unattainable ideal. Rather, it's about the ongoing process of self-correction, of cultivating an agile and discerning mind. It's the commitment to looking and looking again, always with fresh eyes and a willingness to question what seems most certain. Confirmation bias, like a magnet, pulls evidence towards our existing beliefs. The Socratic method demagnetizes this pull, encouraging us to explore the full spectrum of evidence, even that which contradicts our cherished views. It's about intellectual honesty, valuing the pursuit of truth above the comfort of being right, transforming our minds from fortresses into open forums for discovery. Negativity bias can cast long shadows over our achievements and prospects. Stoic mindfulness, the practice of observing our thoughts without immediate judgment, allows us to see these shadows for what they are, often exaggerated projections. By focusing on virtuous action within our control, we find that the shadows recede, not because the world changes, but because our relationship to it does. Anchoring bias can fix our thinking to arbitrary starting points, limiting negotiation and innovation. The philosophical discipline of first principles thinking, breaking a problem down to its most fundamental, undeniable truths and reasoning up from there, shatters these arbitrary anchors. It allows us to build solutions on solid ground, not on the accidental placement of an initial marker. The Dunning-Kruger effect often shields incompetence with a veil of confidence. The philosophical pursuit of self-knowledge, epitomized by the Delphic maxim, "Know Thyself," pierces this veil. It encourages a realistic appraisal of one's strengths and weaknesses, fostering a humility that is not self-deprecating, but is, in fact, the fertile ground for genuine growth and learning. The bandwagon effect urges conformity, but philosophy champions authenticity. Existentialist thought, for example, emphasizes individual responsibility in creating one's own meaning and values, even in the face of societal pressure. This isn't a call for needless rebellion, but for conscious choice, ensuring our beliefs and actions are our own, not merely echoes of the crowd. The battle against cognitive biases is not fought with grand gestures, but with small, consistent acts of intellectual vigilance. It's in the pause before judgment, the question whispered to oneself, the willingness to consider an opposing view. Each act strengthens the muscle of critical thought, making us less susceptible to the mind's inherent shortcuts and more capable of navigating complexity with wisdom. Ultimately, understanding cognitive biases through a philosophical lens is an act of empowerment. It transforms us from unwitting puppets of our own minds into conscious participants in the shaping of our thoughts and beliefs. This journey requires courage, humility, and a persistent desire for truth, but its reward is a mind more free, more clear, and more truly our own. Key takeaways. Our minds are prone to systematic errors like confirmation bias, negativity bias, anchoring, Dunning-Kruger, and the bandwagon effect. Philosophical practices such as the Socratic method, Stoic objectivity, systematic doubt, epistemic humility, and championing independent thought provide powerful antidotes. The pursuit of a less biased mind is a lifelong endeavor, a continuous refinement of our inner world. It is not about achieving a state of perfect objectivity, but about embracing the journey of critical self-awareness with diligence and an open heart. Every questioned assumption, every resisted shortcut, is a step towards greater intellectual freedom and a more profound engagement with reality.